Welcome to Football Discussion Daily. Today is the 3rd of April, 2026. If you like us, please subscribe on YouTube. We release long-form video. Instagram and TikTok we release short-form video. My name is Joe. I'm here with the co-host CGO or George, and today we are talking about a lot of the top officials in Italy on their national team squad and within their football association have resigned today. Italy has now missed 3 straight World Cups. The last knockout game they won was the 2006 Zidane headbutt game, which was 20 years ago now, or 19 years and 9 months or something. They have won a Euro in that time. They did get to another Euro final, but I think that anybody looking at this team would still say the World Cup is their World Cup performance is underperforming. Italy missing is 30 years ago, they were thinking it's just as big as Germany or Brazil missing. So this is massive. George, what do you think has happened over the last 20 years to lead to this situation? Because I don't think a team just overnight just goes from one of the best, most historic teams to complete failure. I think this is a series of things that have happened. What in your opinion, has happened?
No, the reality is that if you look at the Italian football over the last, let's say, decades or more, you notice that the issue of development, discovery of players has gone on the decline. And that can be attributed to poor grassroots development when it comes to the aspect of developing the game. So that is really telling on them at this point. Not doing very well because these things don't happen overnight. It's just a matter of time before you start seeing the effect, the impact of not doing what you're supposed to do. So that's one of the biggest problem Italy is facing.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's been, from what I've seen, there's been a lack of investment into infrastructure across the board, and so I think it's a combination too of top players don't go to Italy that much anymore. It happens, but not as often as it happened. Like Ronaldo went there 6 or 7 years ago. It happens, but not nearly as it happened. Italy was the place to be in the 90s and early 2000s.
Yes.
Spain probably it wasn't until the emergence of Messi and Ronaldo that Spain really overtook them. And it's only been in the decline of Messi and Ronaldo that I feel like English Premier League has truly overtaken Spain as this is the place to go. And Real Madrid and Barcelona are probably still over any team in the Premier League in terms of where players want to go. But in the 90s, it was very much Italy. You saw a lot of top Brazilian talents go there. You saw they were just winning a lot of European trophies left and right. In the last 20, 30 years, their stadiums have largely have slowly deteriorated in terms of quality. A lot of the English money has poured into the English game. England has taken advantage of the globalization of the sport a lot better than a lot of the other leagues. Spain has been able to capitalize on the emergence of Barcelona as a rival to Madrid. I'm not sure. I think Barcelona was probably a level below Madrid 30 years ago, and now they're relatively equal. I think that rivalry has really helped La Liga. So there's a lot of different reasons. I think that this, and it's going to take a while before them to go forward. One question I have for you, George, is Italy is a huge population. You look at Netherlands are still successful, Belgium's still successful, with a lot less people. Do you think that has anything to do with that this Italian team could reach the heights they have before in the past?
The issue is that if you are not doing the right thing, then definitely at some point people will start seeing the effect of your poor performance in terms of managing talents. Now ask yourself, when last did we see an Italian club winning the Champions League? That was 2010 when Inter Milan won the Champions League. I think Jose Mourinho was the one who was in charge of the team then. Now 2010, and we're in 2026. So that tells you how the kind of regression Italian football has experienced in the last 2 decades. So it's not encouraging. And like you rightly said, when you don't have much investment in the league, then you can't attract great talents from across the globe. because we know in the early 90s, one of the places most top players wants to go to is Italian Serie A. In fact, if you want to prove your greatness, Italy is one of those places where most players
Yeah,
always aspire to play. But now that's no more the case again. So it shows you
but
that
George,
football has really declined.
budget wise though, on a club perspective, um, the last 15 years, the teams that have won the Champions League are Premier League, PSG, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern.
Yes,
Realistically, I can't see any team other than them. Those teams, English Premier League, Bayern, Real, Barca, PSG, winning the Champions League anytime soon. I don't think that's going to happen this year, next year. Just the budgets of that group of teams is just so much higher than everybody else that it's just very hard. And there are international clubs, international leagues that have not suffered despite despite their league underperforming in Europe. France hadn't won in the Champions League for 30 years before last year, and their national team has been very successful. How has France been able to have? Let's ignore last year. Let's assume I'm asking you this 1 year ago before France won the Champions League. A French team won the Champions League. How was France able to overcome that lack of Champions League success and that perception of a lower league and still develop their players and that? How would you respond to that?
now, now, if you look at the amount of exports from France to other leagues, you can compare with the amount of export of Italian players in other leagues, especially top leagues. That's the difference. Now we talked about the high depth of the French squad. Now, ask yourself, most of them are not playing in the French League One. We have those who play in the Premier League, those playing in Spanish League. We have those who are playing in the Italian League, those playing in other leagues. So, but in the case of Italy, you don't find that. I can't remember, apart from this guy who plays for Newcastle, I can't remember any Italian player who that is Tonali, Sandro Tonali. I can't remember any other Italian player who is playing outside Italy and is doing so greatly. So
There's a
that tells you.
particular Yoruba player on Brentford who's doing quite well, but he's very young. He's doing well for Brentford. He is not a national team player yet.
But it's not a national team player.
No, he's
So,
not.
and Brentford is not in the class of Manchester City, Arsenal, and teams like that. So, that tells you the difference between the French team players and then the the
But
Italian
George,
team players.
again, I'll counter that and say that's a symptom, not a cause. Like I don't think Germany has that many exports. They probably have more than Italy, but still nothing compared to France. They've honestly been on the decline a bit, but a little bit more successful than they have at least qualified for World Cups. Do you see this similar impact in the future happening with Germany? Do you feel like their lack of exports is contributing to the last 10 years internationally for them has been one of their worst periods of the last 50 years? Do you think that that's related for Germany?
Now, if you look at the German has learned through the hard way. They went back to the business. There was a time that football was also on the decline after they won the 1990 World Cup. This German national team started going on the decline. Now, what did they do? They went back to the basics. They went into investing into grassroots, trying to bring up upcoming players, young players, trying to catch them young. And that was what they did. And after some time, we saw the German national team coming back to the level everybody has known them to be. So the Italians have to do the same thing. They have to go back to the drawing board now, invest into young players, grassroots football. When you do that, you're able to discover players, create an enabling environment for them to thrive. When you do that, that helps you. It might take some time, it might take some years, but after some time, you start seeing the dividends of those efforts one has made. So they need to do
Yeah,
that.
I mean, George, a couple things there. I mean, first off, I think the bigger problem is development rather than player identification. But I think that we're very close there. One thing though is like I feel like the role of an FA isn't you can't force teams to invest, but you can incentivize things like higher sell-on clauses for training youth. So like if I'm training a youth player from 10 to 16, I then get 5% of any future transfer fee because I've developed him in some of his 4 years. That exists in a lot of countries. It probably does in Italy as well. But you can change that metric to more incentivize youth development. It's one of the reasons that a lot of feeder clubs do make a lot of money. And Italian teams have largely become feeders for the continent. They can even provide more. It allows them to provide more investment in their facilities. I think that incentivizing Italian teams to increase their stadium, because I've been to a couple stadiums in Italy, and they're, in my opinion, among the weakest that I've been a part of. One of the worst, some of the worst fan experiences. I can only imagine what the player facilities are like. Those are things that add up over time when it comes to revenue generation, which it turns to investment. It becomes a death spiral. I could totally see Italy has such a great culture of supportership. And I think that more investment across the board in infrastructure would be really good for Italian football, as it would any federation. But I think it's really exciting.
So, Joe, I have a question for you. Now that do you think having the Italian Football Federation president and other officials resigning, do you think that's something that they're supposed to do? Will that change the dynamics of everything?
I'll say I don't know the specifics of what this federation guy did. I don't think that a single federation head is the reason that Italian football has fallen so far. I do feel like a new voice in there could absolutely do some of the reforms I just mentioned and help incentivize the owners of Italian clubs to invest in infrastructure and youth training. But I do feel like, yeah, if the Gattuso also resigned, right?
Yeah, of course. I think
Yeah.
he has
I
been
do think
asked to
that
leave.
clean. I'm not hopeful because I know how there's a lot of politics in a lot of these organizations, and this is not just Italy. Every country has politics in their FA, and the person who comes in is not necessarily going to be a reformer, but the person who stays is definitely not going to be a reformer. And so it's you're not going to improve with this guy. It's probably best to get rid of him. And the next guy, I'm not hopeful, but there's at least a chance. So um,
Be-
yeah, I think
because
there's
this guy
way too much
became
politics in FAs across the board.
he became the president October of 2018, and then when he came in, they were able to win the Euros. I think in 2020, and then thereafter they've missed out in two World Cups, 2022 and now 2026. I think to the Italians is something that is unacceptable. I guess
I
that's why
remember,
they had
I
to throw in the
remember
towel.
when Italy missed. I think it was 2018 Russia, same as USA. I mean, it was unthinkable. Like, imagine saying like Germany and Brazil are going to miss next World Cup, like right now. Like that was how unthinkable it was. I mean, Italy. Again, when I was growing up, I think they had the same. My first World Cup, I think Italy had the same amount of World Cups as Brazil and Germany. I think they all had three. Um, I could be wrong. Maybe one of them had four, but those were the three football nations: Brazil, Germany, Italy. Like going into every World Cup, for them to miss three straight is just crazy. George, do you see it? Can you see any scenario in the next 5-10 years where this happens to a Germany who's had some of their weaker 10 years, where this could happen to a Brazil, where they've probably had one of their weaker 10-year periods in their history as well, at least from a World Cup perspective. Could you see this happening on either of those?
Of course, it can happen if you don't do what you're supposed to do. If it can happen to Italy, what it means is that it can happen to any country. As long as you decided not to do the right thing, invest into youth football development, then at some point it's going to come back to haunt you. That's what the Italians are paying for today because of what they failed to do years back. So hopefully this might be a wake-up call for them to go back to the drawing board and do what is right, invest into youth football development, and also see how they can also uh, bring in incentives to clubs so that they can encourage clubs to pay so much focus to youth development. That will help the country's football to grow. It's just a matter of time before they start seeing the dividends for it. So it
That's
cannot go to
awesome.
any country. Yeah.
That's awesome, George. It'd be really fascinating to see. I think that we're seeing a kind of a shift in the international structure of football, and I think it'll be really interesting to see who the new powers are of the next generation. Another interesting thing, just like I was looking the other day, I think that these countries, it's cyclical a lot. Like Portugal is a country that before 1990s, like Portugal was not a world power whatsoever.
Yes. Yes.
Belgium Netherlands, I should say, was a massive power in the 70s and the 60s. Like these things are cyclical. These countries a lot of them will fall out, not qualify for 10 years, then come back. I didn't see it happening to Italy, but Italy is massive, has a lot of money, a lot bigger than Netherlands, a lot bigger than Portugal. They definitely have the infrastructure that if a talent of a Messi or Ronaldo was born in Italy, they are going to become an all-time great player. Italy is, it's just at the margins of this where 1% and 2% matter. It is a massive difference across 2 years of games to qualify for these tournaments. So I think Italy is not where they want to be, but they could easily bounce back, and it's really interesting to see as an outside observer. Let me close out, George, with our standard questions, and that's number one. What do you think went wrong with Italy? Number two, do you think it's correct that there was a complete resignation at the top of the board, that head of the FA and Gattuso? And number three, do you think another country, a massive country like Brazil or Germany, this could happen to them where they miss 2 or 3 straight World Cups? Thank you for listening, and let us know your